If you've only got a few unpredictable hours a week to game, is a game that's considered one of the hardest single player games ever made actually worth your time? No live service grind, no multiplayer skill wall, just you, a massive world, and your own pace. I put real hours into Elden Ring, and I've got an honest verdict for busy gamers in 2026. Let's get into it. What's up, everyone? I am F5 Dag, gaming since 1980, playing at 4 a.m. before the whole family wakes up. And if you're new here, hit subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. And as a busy gamer, let me ask you something. Is Elden Ring worth adding to your single player collection? Let's find out. So before I dig into Elden Ring, quick note for anybody new here. This channel started out focused pretty tightly on relaxing, low stress games, the kind of thing you zone out with at 4 a.m. That's still very much part of what I do, but I've been widening the lens a bit lately, and I want to be upfront about why. What I've realized is the real thread connecting everything I recommend isn't relaxing specifically. It's single player games that respect your limited time, no live service grind, no ranked multiplayer skill wall that you need weeks to climb, just a game that you can actually sit down with, make progress on your own schedule, and put down when life happens. That's what moms, dads, and older gamers with unpredictable free time actually need. And honestly, that's always been the real value that I've been offering. This doesn't mean I'm abandoning the relaxation picks. The Hunter, American Truck Simulator, Planet Zoo, those are still exactly the kind of thing you're going to keep seeing here. It just means the net's getting wider. If a game is single player, respects the fact that your available time is unpredictable, and doesn't punish you for stepping away for a week because of some live service system ticking along with you, it's fair game for this channel now, regardless of genre. Elden Ring is a great test case for that broader idea, and let's get into it. So when you talk about Elden Ring, here's the pitch. Elden Ring is From Software's massive open-world action RPG, and if you've never played one of their games before, this is generally the most approachable entry point that they've ever made. You create a character, get dropped into a huge interconnected open world called the Lands Between, and you're basically free to go wherever you want from almost the very first hour. There is a loose critical path if you want direction, but nothing stops you from wandering off into a completely different region the moment something catches your eye. The scale here is pretty enormous. We're talking dozens of hours just to see the main story through, and considerably more if you're chasing the full map. Every optional boss, every hidden questline tucked away in a corners most players are never going to find. And unlike the DLC situations we've talked about on other channels, the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion that came out since launch does add a pretty massive new region on top of all of that, not a small cosmetic add-on. What struck me most going in was just how much this game trusts you to figure things out on your own. There's minimal handholding, almost no tutorial pop-ups constantly explaining mechanics, and the game genuinely respects your ability to experiment and learn through doing. That can feel disorienting in your opening hour if you're used to more guided experiences, but it becomes one of the most rewarding parts of the whole package once it clicks. Every discovery is genuinely feels like yours, not something that the game walked you into. When you think about the core loop, exploration, and combat, the actual moment-to-moment gameplay blends careful, methodical combat with genuine exploration-driven discovery. Combat demands real attention, reading enemy attack patterns, managing your stamina, picking the right moment to strike rather than button mashing your way through. It's tense, but in a good way, the kind of tension that comes from a fair fight rather than a cheap one once you understand what the game's actually going to ask of you. Exploration is where this game generally sets itself apart for almost anything else in the genre. There's no glowing quest marker dragging you around. You find things because you were curious about that weird structure on the horizon, or because you followed a path that just seemed interesting. I've had entire sessions where I set out to do one specific thing and ended up 3 hours deep in a completely unrelated dungeon because I got curious about a light I saw in the distance. That kind of organic discovery is rare, and it's a huge part of why this game has stuck with people the way it has. And let's take a couple minutes and talk about boss design, because specifically on the boss fights themselves, because they are really the emotional centerpiece of the whole experience. Each major boss is a genuine distinct puzzle, different attack patterns, different pacing, different weaknesses to figure out. The first several attempts against a tough one usually is going to feel completely unfair. Like there's basically no possible way to survive what's coming at you. Then something shifts. You start recognizing the tells, you start understanding the rhythm, and eventually a fight that felt impossible becomes something you can execute cleanly, sometimes without even taking a single hit. That transformation from this is basically impossible to I've actually mastered this is about as satisfying a feeling as gaming offers, and very few other games manage to earn it as honestly as this one does. There's no difficulty slider making the game easier for you. Every ounce of that progress is basically yours, built through repetition and attention rather than a menu setting. For players willing to put in that effort, the payoff is going to be enormous. Let's talk about art, direction, atmosphere, and world building because the presentation deserves real credit too. This is a pretty gorgeous game with a distinct art direction that makes every region feel like it has real history behind it. Crumbling architectures, environmental storytelling scattered everywhere if you pay attention, item descriptions that hint at a much larger, tragic story without ever spelling it out directly to you. You could spend real time just piecing together the lore from context clues alone, and a whole community has built itself around exactly that kind of detective work. That atmosphere does a lot of heavy lifting for the exploration loop specifically. You're not just wandering because there might be loot around the corner, you're wandering because the world itself makes you curious about what happened here. And that is a much stickier hook than just pure mechanical incentives alone. Now, let's talk about how this fits into the single player limited time pitch that I'm pushing. Here's the part that matters most for the actual thesis of this channel. You can save and quit literally anywhere, anytime, and pick back up exactly where you left off. There's no live service timer counting down, no daily login streak to maintain, no rank ladder resetting while you're away for 2 weeks because life got busy. This is a game built to be picked up in whatever chunks of time you actually have, whether that's a rush 20 minutes or a rare, luxurious 3 hours Saturday afternoon. And critically, outside of some pretty optional multiplayer elements, co op summons if you want help on a tough boss, or invasions if you want a PvP element, the core experience is entirely single player. Nobody's waiting on you in a lobby. Nobody's carrying you or getting carried by you. Your progress is yours on your schedule, which is exactly the value proposition busy adult gamers like me and you actually need. Compare that to something like a competitive shooter or a live service looter, where falling behind on a season pass or missing a limited time event generally is going to cost you content that you paid for. There's none of that pressure here. Come back after a 2 month break because work got busy or the kids needed you, and the world's exactly as you left it, waiting patiently. That is a genuine, underrated quality in a big budget game, and it's exactly that kind of thing this channel is going to start prioritizing more than picking what to cover. The game does offer up character builds and a ton of replayability, as there's a deep character building system underneath all of this. You can build toward pure melee strength, a spellcaster slinging sorceries from a distance, a stealthy dagger and poison approach, or dozens of hybrid combinations in between. That flexibility means your second or third playthrough can feel like an almost entirely different game depending on how you build your character, which gives this a replayability ceiling well beyond most single player RPGs that I've covered on this channel. What's nice for a busy schedule specifically is that the game's going to offer up a respec that you can do to your character, which will be available later in the game. So you're not going to be permanently locked into early decisions before you truly understand all of the mechanics and how this game plays out. If you realize 40 hours in that you'd rather be playing a spellcaster than a strength build, that is a genuine option rather than a full restart, which matters a lot when your available time to experiment is pretty limited. Now, let me compare this to some of the other single player picks because I want to lean into the bigger single player titles now, as it's worth a quick comparison to a couple other heavy hitters in this space. Baldur's Gate 3 leans much harder into narrative choice and party based tactics. If you want a game that reacts to dialogue decisions and lets you build a whole team, that is going to be the stronger pick. When you think about Cyberpunk 2077, it does give you a dense, story driven city to get lost in with a much more linear central narrative pulling you forward. Elden Ring, on the other hand, does sit in a different lane entirely, less narrative handholding, more pure exploration and mastery driven combat. If you want a story told to you, this probably isn't your best entry point. If you want a world to genuinely get lost in and a real sense of earned mastery over difficult challenges, this is going to be about as good as it gets. All three of these, though, are genuinely excellent single player picks that fit this channel's new direction. The right one for you really is going to come down to whether you want narrative choice, cinematic story, or pure exploration and challenge leading the experience. Now, as always, I do have an honest gripe with most games, and so this one is a real one given the audience that I'm going to be talking to. This game is hard. Not slightly challenging hard, genuinely, repeatedly, sometimes frustratingly difficult. You are going to die. Some bosses took me a dozen attempts, if not more, before I found the pattern and finally got through. And that is honestly on the easier end of what some players report for the toughest fights in this game. For a busy adult gamer with limited session time, that is a real tension worth being honest about. If your available window tonight is 20 minutes and you spend all of it dying to the same boss without making forward progress, it's actually going to feel like your precious gaming time just got wasted rather than well spent. This isn't a game that respects your time in the sense of always making forward progress. It respects your time in the sense of letting you set your own pace and step away whenever you need to. But the difficulty itself doesn't bend to your schedule. My honest advice, if you're coming to this with limited time, don't be afraid to walk away from a boss fight that's beating you and go explore somewhere else for a while. The open world design actually supports this beautifully. There's almost always another path, another area, another goal to make progress on while a tough fight simmers in the back of your mind. Treat the difficulty as optional friction you can route around rather than a wall you have to break through immediately. And now this becomes a much more forgiving experience for a limited schedule than its reputation is going to truly suggest. There's also a genuine mental cost to this kind of difficulty that's worth naming. Some nights after a long day, the last thing you want is a game that demands sharp focus and punishes mistakes. If you're looking for something to genuinely unwind with after a rough day, this game might not be the right pick for that specific mood, even though it's still an incredible game in general. I'd almost recommend keeping something gentler in the rotation alongside this one. Save Elden Ring for the nights you've got a bit more mental energy to spare and lean on a calmer pick for the nights you really just need to simply switch off. One more honest note, some of the quest lines are generally obtuse, missable, or require talking to specific NPCs in a very particular order and location that the game does very little to signal clearly. If you want to experience the full character storylines without missing content, you're probably going to end up consulting a guide at some point, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is worth knowing going in that this isn't a game that's always going to respect your time when it comes to figuring out where to go next on its own terms. So here's going to be my verdict. Elden Ring is a pretty extraordinary single player game. It is a strong pick under this channel's broader new direction, but it does come with real caveats worth taking seriously if your gaming time is limited and unpredictable. Look, the world design, the sense of discovery, the character building depth are about as good as this genre is going to get. The save anywhere, no live service pressure structures generally respects a busy schedule in ways that basically most games don't. Now, I do have to be honest with everybody. The difficulty of Elden Ring is very real. My honest recommendation here, go in with the mindset of exploring around tough fights rather than banging your head against them constantly. Give yourself permission to maybe consult a guide when quest lines get confusing. Do that, and I can tell you this game is going to be very rewarding, patient-paced game that's going to fit into your limited time pitch about as well as anything that I've covered on this channel. So if you're brand new to this genre and unsure whether or not Elden Ring is going to be for you, take an honest shot at the very first major boss before you decide. That fight is a pretty good filter. And if you push through it and kind of move from that frustration to the mastery that I talked about earlier, you're going to know pretty quickly whether the rest of the game is going to be for you. If it's still not clicking after that fair attempt, look, there's no shame in setting it aside for maybe one of the calmer picks in my catalog instead. Not every great game is going to be the right fit for every mood or basically every schedule, and that is generally fine. I am going to recommend Elden Ring with the caveat that you absolutely know what you're going to sign up for before attempting to play the game. If you made it to the end of the video, I do want to thank you. And if you're a fellow busy gamer looking for single player picks that's actually going to respect your time, subscribe, as I do provide new honest verdicts every Tuesday and Saturday. Let me know down in the comments, have you actually beaten Elden Ring, or is there still a boss haunting you even to this day? And as always, hit F5, reset, reload. I am F5 Dad, and I'll see you on the next video.